it. That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Welcome to BS, Beyond Stereotypes, a podcast about lawyers using their authentic voices to change the world.
I believe being a Black woman has been my superpower. I really do believe that. And I have to thank my mother and those who came before her, you know, for that view of life as a Black person I'm imbued with.
Welcome to BS, Beyond Stereotypes. I'm your host, Merle Vaughn. Here to BS with me today is Paula Boggs, whose story I find fascinating and who will no doubt inspire all of you to embrace your authenticity. Hi, Paula. Thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
Hi, Merle. Good to see you today.
You know, I neglected to read your biography or tell our audience, give our audience an idea of what your esteemed legal career was. I will briefly do that, and then you can kind of correct me and give us more insight. But I know that you practiced law for at least 30 years. That you ended up in-house at both Dell and, you know, as a GC and the GC at Starbucks at the end of your career. I got that right?
Absolutely.
And that was after having had a career somewhat in the military, after having a 4-year ROTC scholarship. And so, now you're a musician. So I find all of that fascinating. And why don't you fill in what I've left out about your, you know, just kind of your elevator pitch about your career?
Well, sure. Let me start by saying I've been a musician all my life, but I'm now in a life chapter where I'm earning money from music.
Wow.
which is different. And I left that passion for music of it and the performing of it for a long time. So I don't know, maybe the best place to start about me is a little bit from the beginning. I'm the child of educators, born in Washington, D.C., lived in segregated Virginia for a while. Then at age 13, my mom moved herself and her 4 children out of the segregated South to Europe, where she was the teacher for the Department of Defense school system. I came back to the U.S. for college, was Army ROTC. While a cadet, I earned my airborne wings.
Wow.
And then after graduating the top ROTC cadet from Johns Hopkins, I went on to law school at Berkeley and then served my 4-year military commitment in Washington, D.C. Then moved to Seattle, and over the past generation, I've been a federal prosecutor. I've been a big law firm partner. Left Seattle for Dell, did that for 5 years, and then returned to Seattle for Starbucks. Meanwhile, sort of on a parallel track was my music story, which began at really age 7 when I first learned how to play piano, didn't like it, discovered guitar at age 10, started writing music. Throughout my middle school, high school years, music was central to who I was. At 17, I did what I think a lot of people, at least of my generation, did, which was I forced myself to make a choice between, going to a school that was strong academically or strong in music or strong in athletics. I was a high school athlete as well. I realize now that was a false choice I put on myself, but it's the one the 17-year-old me put on myself, and that led me to choosing, door number one, the academic route.
Right.
And though music continued to be part of who I was, the older I got, the less that was so. Until by age 30, it was pretty much something I used to do. And that was my music story for another 15 years until really tragedy forced me to reopen that box. And the tragedy was my sister-in-law, my youngest brother's wife, died in a car crash, leaving my brother and a 2-year-old daughter, Jada. And my spouse then really encouraged me to use music, guitar, as a way to grieve. And so with her support, I did that. And once I was re-engaged with music, bit by bit, it was a point of no return. So much so that by 2012, I was done with law, the practice of it. At least I had accomplished everything I had ever hoped to in law and more. And so while I was still young enough to do it, I took another leap into the unknown, leaving Starbucks, leaving the practice of law. And that's basically been my story since 2012, a combination of music, performing it through Paula Boggs Band, public speaking, and, board work, for-profit and nonprofit.
Interesting. And you and I kind of talked briefly before, and one of the notes that I wrote down, which I think, kind of makes me smile, is that you did not like law school. We both attended Berkeley Law School, then known as Bolt, now known as Berkeley for a lot of reasons. And I didn't like it either. But I'm interested to know why you didn't like law school.
Absolutely, I didn't like it at all. And I think, part of it, Merle, is how I got there in the first place, which I think I shared with you was, a bit of a scam, in the sense that I was in college at Johns Hopkins. I was an ROTC scholarship cadet. I had done that deal. By senior year, I realized I just wasn't ready for active duty yet. And, despite, graduating as the number one cadet, I still was not ready for active duty.
Right.
And so I had thought through a variety of delay schemes, and the one that resonated most with me was graduate school. And so I said, okay, I'm going to I'm going to take the LSAT for law school. I'm going to take the GREs. For graduate school, the LSATs are first. And if I do well, then I'm going to go to law school because that's 3 years of delay rather than 2. And I'll do my Army stint as a lawyer as opposed to field artillery or something else, right?
Right.
So
right.
So that was the logic behind ending up at the law school formerly known as Bolt. Nothing more sophisticated than that. And so from day one at Berkeley School of Law, I was there, sort of as okay, this is my tool to do this other thing, right?
Right.
It wasn't, oh, I have this passion to be a lawyer. Rather, it was, okay, this is the tool that at the end of it will enable me to do my 4 years as a lawyer,
right.
As opposed to field artillery or something else, air defense.
Well,
so
that's
how that happened.
And so, it's interesting because I went to law school because I felt like I had to get a graduate degree because both my parents had graduate degrees, and in fact, and they were both educators as well. And in fact, they met in grad school, which is unheard of, right, for their era. And they met in grad school in Oklahoma, of all places, where they actually had to sit behind the rope,
wow.
Segregated from other grad students. So, I mean, you and I probably could talk for a year about all kinds of things, and
wow.
talk about, the kind of things that we've gone through and our parents have gone through. But, I don't even know where to go with you, Paula. I mean, you have done so many things, and you've done them so well, and you've been so successful. One of my questions that I usually ask people is, what makes you unique? I think that in and of itself makes you very unique. But I think what really makes you unique is that you're a Black woman doing all these things. So can you talk to me, about what effect or how you feel like you've been able to use it? Has that been your superpower, or has it held you back? I don't know. Talk to me about being a Black woman and having done all these things and done them so well.
Meryl, I don't say this lightly, but I believe being a Black woman has been my superpower. I really do believe that, and I have to thank my mother and those who came before her, for that view of life as a Black person I'm imbued with. And what do I mean by that? Well, one of the things that in the older I get, the more I understand what a gift this was. My great-grandmother was alive until after I graduated from Berkeley School of Law.
Wow.
She was born in 1896, and so she and my Aunt Maggie, who actually lived with my family, her sister actually lived with us for me from the age of 7 until she died in my first year of law school. So these women, my great-grandmother and her sister, Aunt Maggie, who lived with us, were the first generation of my mother's family born free. So, their mother was born a slave. So I had the gift of knowing and living with and internalizing the story of my ancestors in a real-time way. And so I know that is a gift that informs my Black girl magic, if you will.
Right. I love that.
A second is my dad was a professor at an historically Black college, Virginia State, from age 4 for me until my family left for Europe when I was 13. And what that did for me, in fact, my dad was the first, he received Howard University's first PhD in zoology in 1960. And then when that happened, my family moved from Washington, D.C. To Petersburg, Virginia. And what that did for me was, in my world of Black people, almost all of them, like my dad, and my mom had a graduate degree, were highly educated Black people. So, and not just highly educated, they were academicians. And so, as a little kid, I internalized the notion that, Black people were, really, really smart and accomplished and erudite. All those things for me equaled being
right.
Black. And so that was, that was my petri dish, if you will, as a little kid. And, the other thing about my early childhood, and candidly, some of it I'm actually just realizing the enormity of the situation I was in this post-George Floyd moment. So an example of that is, so we lived in the segregated South. My dad's a professor at Virginia State, and as a kid, I was attending a Catholic school in Petersburg, St. Joseph's, which was the only integrated school in all of Petersburg. So everything else was segregated. It was either all Black or all white. And if you weren't white or you weren't Black, you probably didn't live in Petersburg, Virginia. There was no Latino community. There was there was no Asian American community that I knew about. It was just Black or white. And I attended St. Joseph's from grades 1 through 6. Well, from grades 1 through 4, I was the only Black girl in a class of 50 kids. And so and then a second Black girl arrived in 5th grade, Susan Bush, and we became fast friends. Well, what I really hadn't internalized, Merle, until really, it's embarrassing, but until this sort of George Floyd moment of reckoning for our nation, is that whole time between 1st grade and 4th grade, I never visited the home of any of my classmates, nor did any of them visit my home. So, I went to birthday parties and this and that, and had sleepovers like little kids have with my Black friends, but all of my school friends were white, except the one little black boy who, was in all of those classes too. So because of segregation, I never, for my classmates, grades 1 through 4, I never got invited anywhere, nor, would, the parents of my classmates allow them to come to my house, and it's only been, somehow I just kind of navigated through that. And, but now I realize, you know what? Wow. I never spent the night over, the home of a white person until we moved to Europe.
Right. Well, you're not going to believe this. Okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you that I think that what that prepares you for is code switching, right? So it makes you very adept at being able to exist effectively in different worlds, right? You can exist in the black world, you can exist in the white world. It makes you really good at turning those switches and figuring out what the expectations are for you, and how you present yourself in various situations. But I have to say this. You're not going to believe this. My husband graduated from Virginia State University.
No way.
His mother graduated from Virginia State University, and his father taught ROTC at Virginia State University, which is where he met his wife. And they also ended up in Europe. My husband was, before that, they were in Europe because of the military, and my husband was born in Germany. So, I mean, there's just so many things here we could like go on and on about.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but he also, I'm from Oklahoma, and ended up, my parents were the only ones who left Oklahoma. They were brilliant to do that, and we ended up in California when I was 7. So I'm pretty much a California girl. So I never really had that segregation experience, but I have definitely heard about it from my husband, and the fact that his family's from Ahoskie, North Carolina, and he went to elementary school and segregated schools. So, I definitely have heard about it. I haven't necessarily experienced it, except that I did grow up in Compton, which was all Black at the time. So I didn't know any white people. So
wow.
let me ask you this: what stereotypes do you feel? We haven't even really, let's talk about practicing law, since you did spend 30 years doing that and reaching the heights of it. Even though it seems that you don't really want to talk about it, and I don't blame you, but I'm going to make you. What stereotypes do you think that you had to overcome, particularly, for example, as the GC at Starbucks? Like, do you feel like you were accepted, totally, or do you feel like you had to prove yourself, or do you feel like you just didn't care and they had to deal with it?
Wow, that's a great question. And
thank you.
You're welcome. The upshot. Let's get to the bottom line. At Starbucks, I did not care, and I was in an environment that allowed me to be my authentic self. So both those things were true. So how did I get there, though? How did I get to an emotional state where, I was going to do my job and do it in a way that was informed by knowing I could do my job to the best of my ability and never fear being fired.
Okay.
So how did I get there, right?
Yeah,
Well,
inquiring minds want to know.
yeah. So how did I get there? Well, I got there because of the job I had before Starbucks. So when my spouse and I left Seattle and moved to Austin, Texas, for me to join Dell, we were breaking all kinds of new ground at Dell, in the sense of I was the first openly gay executive in the history of Dell. I was the first Black woman executive at Dell, and the first Black man arrived maybe 6 weeks before me. Okay, so
Wow.
so yeah, so there was a lot of new in that sense, but it is also true that Dell was on fire in the best sense of that word during the 5 years I was there. It quadrupled in size in 5 years, but it also had its first layoff during that period too. So it was like this boom bust thing. And so it was during that period that my spouse and I went to a financial advisor and said, okay, if Paula got fired tomorrow, what would it take for us to live for a year, with the idea that within a year, Paula could probably get another job? What does that look like? And we literally mapped that out and structured our life that way. So by the time I got to Starbucks, I had the confidence to know that, if by doing the right thing I got fired at this place, I can live. I know what
Amen.
I need to do and I have the confidence to know I can get another job. It may take a while. It may not happen overnight, but we're going to be okay financially if I get fired from this job. So day one, arriving at Starbucks, I arrived with that attitude, that I'm here to do something, and if for whatever reason that leads to me getting fired, we're going to be okay. My family's going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. Now, as it turned out, Starbucks was an amazing place for me to work. And, after 10 years of it, my swan song to Starbucks was, thank you for allowing me to do my thing. I had lived and worked in an environment, namely Starbucks, that had fueled my ability to do my thing. And I was incredibly grateful for that. But I didn't know that on day one.
Right.
On day one, what I knew was these folks have hired me to do a job. I'm going to do this job to the best of my ability. And if by so doing I get fired, I'm going to be okay, and my family's going to be okay. And that I had that within me on day one.
It's funny. I feel you 100%. It's one of those things that if you can get there, it allows you to not only be authentic, but also to pursue your passion, particularly if that passion is to try to help people help other people. And it allows you to not succumb to fear. But I think you were fortunate to be at Starbucks to do that. I think it also says a lot about just who you are, that you had that thought in the first place, and the fact that you were able to not feel like you had to keep up with the Joneses and live, from paycheck to paycheck, right? So there are a lot of things there. One of the things that I did, a long time ago was I read that book, The Millionaire Next Door, and I decided, I want to be that guy. I want to be that person who nobody would ever know whether or not what I have. Yeah, I drive a nice car, but other than that, keep them guessing.
Yes.
And I think that there's something very, very liberating about that. Now, let me ask you this. We have somebody in common, and I think I would be remiss if we didn't give him a shout out, and that is Bob Major, who is the name, one of the names in Major Lindsay in Africa, whom I adore, and he introduced us. And I don't know, do you have any fun stories about Bob, or how you met, or anything ways that he's helped you?
I don't have any fun stories about Bob, but I do have a fun story about the late Marty Africa.
Who, that works.
Was the reason I knew your firm in the first place. Marty was the placement director at UC Berkeley School of Law when I was a first-year law student. After my first year, Marty left and helped form, your firm. So that's how I met Bob Major, through Marty Africa. The fun story is Marty Africa placed me at Dell, and so your firm placed me through Marty Africa at Dell, and so we're in the short strokes, and Marty comes, it's like, hey, they're about to make you an offer. In response to that, I said to Marty, okay, Marty, here's the deal. I don't even know if you know this, but I'm gay, and they've got to know that I'm gay, and that we're not going to, pick up and leave Seattle for Austin, Texas, unless they're not just tolerant, but they they are welcoming us as a gay couple, right? So so Marty says, well, let me go and check with them.
Let me check.
And so she a day or so later, she comes back and she says, Paula, they say they don't care if you're purple, they don't care who you're sleeping with, they just want you, okay? And so with that, what it meant, Merle, was for the first time in my career, Randy and I were accepted as a couple in, my workspace, and everyone from Michael Dell on down knew the deal with me and us.
Right.
So there was, there was no longer, the kabuki dance of, so what did you do this weekend? And, the gender neutral pronouns and all the other, things gay people who are closeted go through. When they are closeted, I went through. I was freed from all of that. The irony is that Marty helped with us leaving liberal Seattle for conservative Texas, and by so doing, we for the first time were our authentic selves as a couple.
That's awesome. That is an amazing story. So, okay, so I forced you to talk a little bit about practicing law. Let's end this podcast and this conversation by talking. Tell us about music. Tell us about your band. Tell us the name of the band. Tell us where we can find your music. Do you write music? Give us the skinny on it.
I am the front woman for the Seattle Brewed, as in coffee, brewed, Soulgrass band, Paula Boggs Band. And your listeners can find us at paulaboggsband.net.
Perfect.
We've been around since 2007. We have released 3 full studio albums. We're working on a 4th.
And what kind of things do you sing about? I mean, what's the genre?
Yes, so the music is really melodically.
I used to be a lawyer blues.
It is sort of a fusion of folk, jazz, blues, traditional R&B, and even some elements of world music, bluegrass. It's sort of a stew of music. What I write about, and I'm the chief songwriter, are any of a number of things. We just recorded a song that will be released in September that is called America 2020, which is very much a song of this moment. The opening lyrics are, I need a shower, drink. This body bashing, nation snatching drives me to drink, and I'm weary, even 3 time zones away. So it hinges on what is inspiring me to write. I mean, there's another song I've written in this COVID moment. COVID has been a very fertile time for me creatively. Is a song that it's entitled "Where's My Scarf," and it starts with it's Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday. Because we've lost all sense of time. At least I have. I mean, it could be any day of the week, right?
What difference does it make, right?
Yeah, what difference does it make? And it's Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday. Where's my mask? Shouldn't it be next to my gloves? Must get outside. Damn, it looks like rain. Who's that coming towards me? They need to step aside, right? Okay, so
right.
Like,
that's
awesome. What we've come to, So
that's awesome.
I've written songs that touch on any of a variety of love, this concept of love, and so that has been a muse for me to write music, but. A lot of our music is a reflection of our times, whatever that means, right?
Right.
You know, we
Right.
have a song I wrote that's called "Look Straight Ahead," and even in shows, I say, you know, this is dedicated to all the Black boys and men who too often find themselves at the wrong end of a police encounter.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, you know, it just depends, right, on what, I mean, you know, for better or for worse, there's a lot of material to work with in 21st century America. I mean, there just is.
Right.
And
right.
you know, and so that's where I go.
Well, I will tell you that I have had the pleasure of talking to some of the most fascinating lawyers by doing this podcast. One of the people, you know, the other musician that I talked to is David Kelly. He's the GC for the Golden State Warriors, and he's a rapper, and he had just I don't know if you call it dropped or whatever his latest single when we spoke, and somehow I got to get you two together. I think there's a collaboration just waiting to happen somehow there.
I would love that. I would love to meet David. I have not had the pleasure.
Yeah. So anyway, you know what? I have taken up a lot of your time, and this has been fun. And like I said, I think if we kept talking, we could probably find so many things that we have in common, or people that we have in common. The thing that I love that we have in common is this idea that, you know, you need to be uniquely you, and you need to be authentic, and that's what this podcast is about, and trying to bring that to people and encourage them to have the courage to be authentic. And so I'd like for you to maybe leave us with one little drop of wisdom for folks that maybe will encourage them to dare to be authentic.
Yes, I'll leave your listeners with this. For a generation now, I've been a champion of diversity and inclusion, and one of the sort of secrets to my success, I think, in creating a culture where diversity and inclusion is celebrated is in how I've defined it, which at the end of the day is a culture where everyone can remove their mask in the workplace. Because I believe that when people are able to remove their masks, whatever their masks are, then they will do their best work. Because wearing a mask, and I come from it as one who has worn the mask in the workplace, is stressful. And you don't even understand the layers of stress that wearing the mask puts on you. And so when you create an environment as a leader, or as someone who is lucky enough to work in an environment where you don't have to wear the mask and you can just be yourself, you're going to do your best work. And so that's been my guiding principle about diversity and inclusion. And we tend to talk about it in terms of, you know, race or gender or sexual orientation or whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's even bigger than that. Because we all have masks, and whether the mask is, I don't want people to know about, maybe there's an emotional issue that I'm living with. that I try to mask, right?
Right.
If you can be in a work environment where you're no longer required to hide that, it's just part of who you are, then you're going to do better work.
Right. No more pretending, right?
Exactly.
No more pretending. Paula, I just want to say thank you for being here to BS with me today. And I really, really appreciate it. And I want to say thanks to everyone for listening. And until the next episode, remember that everybody is different and different is good.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
We hope you enjoyed the stories shared in today's episode of BS, Beyond Stereotypes. Join us next time when another authentic personality unleashes their uniqueness on the world.